Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Imagine being the most qualified professional in a high-stakes meeting. You have over a decade of elite technical experience. You know the exact answer to a critical company problem. But when you speak, your colleagues look at their phones, whisper to each other, and completely ignore your input. Why? Because you have a strong accent, and they mistakenly confuse a language barrier with a lack of intelligence. Welcome back to the channel. This is a place where we explore real-world challenges through powerful storytelling, while helping you master natural English listening and vocabulary. Today's story features Elena, a brilliant software engineer who faces a frustrating corporate bias. We will discover how she overcomes this barrier, proves her undeniable worth, and teaches her team a powerful lesson about true inclusion. Listen closely to the narrative, focus on the pronunciation, and think about how you would handle this situation. Let us begin with Chapter 1, The New Arrival. Elena walked into the pristine, glass-walled headquarters of Novatech with a complex mixture of intense excitement and quiet nerves. She held her leather briefcase tightly, feeling the weight of her 12 years of elite experience as a senior software architect. Back in her home country, she had been a highly respected leader who managed massive engineering teams and designed flawless digital systems. Now she was starting completely fresh in a brand new country, navigating a bustling, unfamiliar metropolis every single morning. Her technical skills were absolutely undeniable, but her command of the English language was still actively developing. She could express complex logic on paper perfectly, but her heavy spoken accent often made her feel deeply self-conscious in public. As she took her seat at her designated new desk, she closed her eyes and silently reminded herself of her past accomplishments. She had successfully designed secure cloud infrastructures that handled millions of active users back home without a single crash. Her busy new team leader, a fast-talking man named David, walked past her cubicle with a quick, distracted nod. "Glad to have you on board with us, Elena. Let me know if you need anything," David said rapidly without stopping. Elena offered a polite smile and hoped with all her heart that her technical work would speak louder than her accent. She organized her workspace, opened her laptop, and prepared herself mentally for the challenges of this highly competitive corporate world. She knew the transition would be difficult, but she was entirely ready to prove her value to this new company. A week later, the entire engineering team was called into a large conference room for an urgent morning meeting. Novatech was preparing to launch its most ambitious and highly anticipated software update of the fiscal year. However, the core development team had suddenly hit a massive, unexpected technical roadblock with real-time data synchronization. David looked visibly stressed as he opened the presentation slides on the large projection screen at the front of the room. "If we do not fix this critical system delay by next Friday, our entire product launch will fail completely," David announced grimly. Elena looked closely at the complex system architecture diagram displayed on the screen and immediately recognized the underlying technical flaw. She had diagnosed and successfully solved this exact synchronization problem 3 years ago at her previous engineering company. She felt a sudden surge of professional confidence and opened her notebook to quickly sketch out a detailed solution. Around the large conference table, her new colleagues began debating various superficial ideas that Elena knew would definitely not work. She held her pen tightly and patiently waited for a brief pause in the loud conversation so she could share her expertise. She breathed in deeply, cleared her throat, and prepared herself to present her architectural strategy to the panicked team.
When the noisy conference room finally fell quiet, Elena raised her hand slightly and cleared her throat to get attention. "I believe I have a very effective solution for this specific synchronization issue," Elena said carefully to the room. She spoke slowly, focusing all her energy on pronouncing every English syllable as accurately and correctly as she possibly could. She clearly explained that changing the database clustering method would eliminate the processing delay and stabilize the data flow completely. However, her strong native accent made her vowels sound unfamiliar, and she briefly struggled to enunciate the technical word clustering. As she shared her detailed analysis, she noticed David looking down at his smartphone, completely distracted by a new notification. Two other senior developers, Tom and Sarah, were whispering quietly to each other and did not seem to be listening at all. Elena finished her technical explanation and looked around the mahogany table, anxiously waiting for some professional feedback or validation. The awkward silence in the room felt incredibly heavy and uncomfortable as her colleagues just looked past her. She could feel her face turning warm as she realized her words had missed their mark entirely.
David finally looked up from his glowing smartphone screen and blinked, clearing his throat in a very dismissive manner. "Thanks for your input, Elena, but we really need to keep our engineering approach simple for now," David said quickly. He did not ask a single follow-up question or acknowledge any of the deep technical details she had just shared. Instead, David immediately turned his full attention toward Tom, a junior developer who had joined the company only 6 months ago. "Tom, what do you think our team should do to resolve this database issue?" David asked with a warm, encouraging smile. Tom stood up confidently and suggested a very basic temporary patch that Elena knew would cause the system to crash under heavy traffic. Tom spoke with flawless native English, utilizing confident body language, perfect pronunciation, and highly fluent corporate expressions. David nodded his head enthusiastically and immediately wrote Tom's short-sighted suggestion on the large dry erase whiteboard. Elena sat back deeply in her ergonomic office chair, feeling a cold, heavy wave of profound frustration wash completely over her. She was undeniably a most experienced engineer in that room, but her accent had made her feel completely invisible. After the discouraging meeting concluded, Elena sat quietly at her desk, staring blindly at her bright computer monitor. She felt a painful, exhausting mixture of intense embarrassment, rising anger, and sudden, deep self-doubt creeping into her mind. She knew with absolute certainty that her architectural solution was correct, but her spoken accent had created an invisible, unfair barrier. It felt as if her corporate colleagues automatically assumed her technical intelligence was low just because her English was not flawless. Later that afternoon, she walked slowly to the communal break room to make herself a warm cup of calming chamomile tea. She unintentionally overheard Tom and Sarah talking near the large coffee machine, discussing the upcoming high-pressure project launch. "Elena tried to say something during the meeting, but I honestly could not follow her complex logic at all," Sarah whispered softly. "Yeah, it is really tough when people cannot articulate their technical points clearly," Tom replied, shaking his head dismissively. Elena quietly left the break room before they could see her standing there, her heavy heart sinking even further into despair. She realized she would have to find an entirely different way to make her professional voice respected in this biased environment. By Wednesday morning, Tom's suggested temporary patch had been fully implemented into the live testing system by the developers.
Elena closely watched the live system performance metrics updating on her monitor with a growing sense of absolute dread. As the user traffic began to rise sharply during the busy lunch hours, the system response time started to slow dramatically. Suddenly, the primary database crashed entirely, exactly as Elena had accurately predicted during the initial team meeting. The entire engineering floor fell into a state of immediate panic as bright red error alerts flashed across everyone's computer screens. David rushed out of his private office, looking incredibly pale and holding his loudly ringing corporate smartphone in his hand. "The chief executive officer just called me directly because our main client application is completely down," David shouted anxiously to the room. Tom was frantically typing code on his mechanical keyboard, but he simply could not find the true root cause of the crash. Elena knew this was the exact moment she had to overcome her hesitation, step forward, and take full control of the situation.
Elena realized that if people could not understand her spoken voice, she would make them see her profound knowledge. She grabbed a thick black marker from her desk and walked directly to the large whiteboard in the center of the frantic room. Without saying a single word to anyone, she began drawing a highly detailed step-by-step diagram of the entire system architecture. She used precise structural arrows, data flow indicators, and clear mathematical formulas to explain the hidden data bottleneck. The chaotic, noisy room slowly grew completely quiet as the panicked developers gathered around her to watch her write. David walked over slowly, watching her marker move across the glossy surface with absolute precision and undeniable certainty. Elena pointed her marker firmly to the exact center of her diagram, where the real-time data synchronization was failing completely. Tom's temporary patch overloaded the primary database node within minutes, Elena said, speaking slowly and with immense authority. "We must redirect the incoming traffic to a secondary cluster immediately to save the core data," she explained clearly. David looked closely at the detailed whiteboard diagram, then looked at the failing code on Tom's monitor, and finally understood. He realized with complete clarity that Elena's brilliant explanation on Monday morning had been the exact solution they needed all along. "Elena is absolutely right about this bottleneck," David said, his voice remarkably quiet with sudden realization and regret. "Tom, step aside immediately and let Elena take full lead on the entire system recovery process," David ordered firmly. Elena calmly sat down at the main engineering terminal, and her fingers flew across the keyboard with total technical confidence. She wrote advanced commands, reconfigured the complex database clusters, and smoothly optimized the massive digital traffic flow. Within 15 minutes of her precise interventions, the flashing red error screens turned back to a safe, steady green color. The entire software system was fully functional once again, and a catastrophic corporate data loss had been completely prevented. The stressed engineering room let out a collective sigh of true relief, and several senior colleagues began to clap quietly for her. Later that evening, after the chaotic office had finally emptied out, David knocked gently on Elena's cubicle wall. He looked visibly uncomfortable, but entirely sincere as he stood there holding 2 warm cups of fresh coffee. "Do you happen to have a brief moment to talk, Elena?" David asked softly, offering her one of the cups. He sat down in the spare chair next to her desk and looked at her directly, expressing his deep regret. "I want to sincerely apologize to you for completely ignoring your technical input during our Monday meeting," David said openly. I let my own corporate impatience and unconscious bias get in the way of listening to the best expert we have," he admitted. Elena accepted his apology with a calm, graceful nod, deeply appreciating his professional honesty and humility in that moment. "My spoken English is still not perfect, David, but my architecture code always is," Elena said with a small, confident smile. David smiled back warmly and assured her that the team dynamic would change completely moving forward from this day on.
The following Monday morning, the engineering team gathered again to plan the final stage of the major product launch. This time, David explicitly invited Elena to sit at the absolute head of the conference table, right next to him. Before anyone else could speak, David addressed the entire group of gathered developers with a very serious expression. "Elena will be officially leading our technical strategy for the remaining duration of this critical project," David announced clearly. Elena opened her laptop with complete composure and presented her comprehensive launch plan, speaking with a calm and steady voice. The entire room listened with deep attention, focusing entirely on the immense value and logic of her technical words. Tom and Sarah nodded their heads in complete agreement, taking extensive notes on their pads as she systematically spoke. Elena felt a profound sense of personal pride as she realized she had successfully broken through the unfair barrier. She had proven to everyone that a strong accent is simply a sign of immense courage, representing a person who speaks multiple languages. From that memorable day on, her unique voice was not just heard by her team, it was truly respected.
Elena's journey reminds us that professional capability is not measured by the perfection of an accent. A strong accent is not a barrier to intelligence, it is simply proof of courage and bilingual skill. True inclusion in the workplace means listening to the value of the message, not judging the delivery. If you enjoyed this story and want to keep improving your English listening skills, please hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel for more real-world stories that challenge perspectives while elevating your language mastery. What would you have done if you were in Elena's position? Share your thoughts in the comments below, as we love reading your insights. And you can find all the vocabulary of the story down below in the description box. Thank you for listening today, and see you in our next story. Goodbye.